Yeah, I see levels, and I'm sure we're gonna hear some levels. I'm gonna do a test run right here, right now. Just give me literally 3 seconds. Let's see where it's at. Hold on, hold on. I'm sure y'all can hear me on the mic. Hold on. There it is. All right.
Perfect. Perfect.
All right. We are live. What's cracking? What's popping? What's shaking? Listen, this is round two of episode 13. And I appreciate those who actually came through, watched, commented, let us know that the volume wasn't working. But it came down to the point to where even on my end, as I'm seeing right now, I'm seeing levels are coming from my microphone. But for some reason, you all couldn't hear me at all. So I, again, because I apologized maybe like 3 or 4 times in that stream, but let me take the time to apologize again, okay? Because this is not only something Grace and I enjoy, but we are doing this to put this out in the world for y'all, you know what I'm saying? And I want y'all to enjoy it just as much as we do, you know? So, again, I'm sorry, my apologies, but you can hear me loud and clear. We are super lit today, and I'm excited, okay? Because this is again going to be round two of talking about Hawkeye, okay? And when it comes down to Hawkeye, boom, I am over here in defense of Hawkeye today. Um, and I hate to have to go through this one more time, but at
Oh
the
my
same time,
God.
you all missed the whole trial that I had going. So
Dude,
if you all,
before you dive into that
yeah,
though,
yeah,
guys,
yeah,
thank you so much for those of you who did stick around for our hour and a half long stream where it was only like me coming through.
yeah, it
So
was
thank you
just
guys for
Grace.
joining on the Grace show. Super appreciate it.
Oh
But we are
man,
so excited to break these down for real for you guys because something we agree on is that the Hawkeye show is doing so amazing. And of course, by name, this is all about, of course, Kate Bishop. Chill. Let's
okay.
go.
So when it comes down to this, let me switch it here. Okay, we're going straight into the trial of Clint Barton, and it is the people versus Clint Barton here. Okay, now I know it may seem a little dramatic here. Okay, and we see Clint right here in the courtroom, and I wanted you all to experience this the first time because I actually put some production into this. You know what
It
I'm
was so good.
saying?
But the world
Oh
will never
man.
see.
Yeah, they won't know what happened, you know. So as far as the people slash the internet versus Clint Barton, the reason why I wanted to hold on, I'm just triple checking it, making sure everything is good on the stream. We good, we Gucci. Listen, I may have to check this a couple times. Like I just want to make sure that we're I have my notes here. Now, the charges. I've added a little bit. I've actually put the charges up here.
Okay,
Okay.
okay.
So, as far as the charges against Clint Barton, it is the fact that he's quote unquote just human. He has no powers. Okay. Um, a lot of people, especially like after the SNL sketch, they were saying once he's out of arrows, he's pretty much useless. Then I posted up the meme as far as the Black Panther meme, okay, and it was a Civil War clip to where he introduces himself to T'Challa, and he's just like, "Hey, I'm Clint," and T'Challa's just like, "I don't care," and the internet kind of threw that out
Rolled
as
with it.
right. They
Yeah.
rolled with it as on some like he is nothing here, and like the last point I have is like the fact that people say that he is the weakest Avenger. Now, when it comes down to um that, okay, and my point of view, I am here to argue the fact that he is actually low key one of, or if not the strongest Avengers that we do have here. Okay, now, Grace, I know you gave me like 5 minutes at the beginning of the last stream. If you could just give me an additional 5 minutes here to
I
explain my
expected nothing
case.
less. Expected nothing less. I was ready. Don't worry.
Okay, cool. All right. So as far as the defense here, and as far as why I believe Clint is the strongest Avenger. Okay. Now, when it comes down to him, just from when we first see him, okay, we saw him initially in Thor. It was a quick clip. But it came down to more so seeing him in the first Avengers. Now, the first point that I wanted to bring up is the fact that Loki chose him. Okay, Loki could have chose anybody to control. It could have been more so somebody a position of power. In a position of power to kind of dismantle the Avengers, but he chose Clint specifically for the fact that Clint was that person able to pretty much take down Shield, the Avengers, pretty much break them. Okay, take down a helicarrier. He gave Loki the whole history of Romanoff, and there were so many reasons as to why I believe Clint was the perfect choice. You know, as far as if you wanted to choose somebody to take out the Avengers, choose somebody that's super low key that knows a little bit of everything in the background. You don't want to get somebody like that's pretty much in the main stage because if anything, they're more likely to see it coming. Okay, but Loki chose him. All right. Now, second point. I put when it comes down to it, I feel like this is where we actually got more shine from Clint. Okay, and by that I mean cheesy one-liners aside, we find out that he's the only Avenger pretty much smart enough to actually have a safe house. Now, I kind of took that when I was watching Age of Ultron to the point that like once the world was down, I guess the internet was down, Ultron took out the internet or whatnot, every system or whatnot. Why didn't anybody else? Why didn't Romanoff? Why didn't Tony Stark? Why didn't anybody have a place safe to go to? Like, once they initially got Hulk back from the rage that he was doing wherever he was, they were lost. They didn't know where to go. And Clint was the only one to have that, you know? And also, I made it a point to say that he was the only one actually aware of his surroundings to not really let Wanda take control of his mind. Now, when we're in Wakanda, right? They were in Wakanda, right, Grace? When they were trying to get the vibranium from Claw.
I You know something? I know they mentioned Wakanda,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Because there was that scene where you have Bruce Banner and Iron Man, and they're like talking about where they can get like, or where tracking the vibranium.
right.
I don't know if it
If
was in Wakanda. I want to say it's not because we're
maybe,
in a
yeah,
factory
yeah,
that's run
yeah.
by Claw. So
Right.
I think it's definitely outside, but I think it was more so of like a side note of like Wakanda. So the nerds out there can be like, okay, we know who's coming. Like
Right.
Black Panther is around the corner. But yeah, I think it was not definitely not inside Wakanda.
Gotcha. Well, the only point that I'm making is we have a super soldier. We have somebody in a armored suit that could detect the movement from anywhere, but yet it's like everybody, especially like even Black Widow and Captain America, they all fell to Wanda in that scene. And fortunately for Clint, he was the only one to actually see that coming and able to take her out, um, and get them out of there, basically. And then I think the last thing I had for Age of Ultron is he basically unintentionally gave us, the viewers, a reason to feel something for Pietro Maximoff, Wanda's brother. And by that, I mean, though his powers seem cool that he can move real fast, throughout the whole movie, he was kind of more so, he had those kind of like Tony Stark one-liners. He was kind of funny here or there, but nobody really kind of felt anything until it came down to the point to where Ultron was about to kill Clint from the Quinjet, and uh, Pietro saved him. And it was in that moment, it was super heartfelt. I may even throw this hashtag heartstring point up early because that is going to come up later. But when it came down to it, that's when we started to feel something for him. And that was something unintentional by Clint, but it was because of Clint that we felt something. Now, moving on. Um, to Civil War, we actually start to see more of this, what I've put into quotes as like Big Brother Hawkeye here. And he kind of played a big brother, almost kind of like a big brother to Wanda in Age of Ultron by um, giving her the confidence to get out there and to keep fighting, even though she was she was at a weak point. She thought was all was lost, but he was there for her. He made her confident enough to come back, get back in the game, and keep fighting alongside the Avengers. You know, that showed team leadership right there. He was able to kind of pull things together, not only for her, but he knows that he's in a fight against robots with some bows and arrows, you know. But that's not why he's weak. But all in all, I'm just saying this is a point to why he's strong. But moving on to Civil War, we see this big brother here take on, let's say, a mission, right? He was given a mission by Captain America to go to Avenger Compound, and with the chance of having to go against Vision, a vibranium android, something that right now is known to be unbreakable, he took that chance, and I think I called it grit. Like, he had that grit to just like, all right, I'm going to go in there and get her, and I'm going to have all of these trick arrows that I can actually possibly stand a chance. But even if it were in a lose-lose situation, he knew what he had to do to convince Wanda to take over. So I don't think, like, I think I said it last time that if I was just like a regular human being with no powers and Captain just said, hey, like, I'm gonna need you to go in there and get Wanda. Yeah, Vision's protecting her, but you got to go in there. I'm gonna be on some
I'm out.
Cap. Yeah, Cap. You know, this was real. First,
Retired.
he's unbreakable. I think I'm cool. I think I'm cool. I think I'm gonna stay retired. You know what I'm saying? I love my family. I think I'm just gonna sit this one out. You know, but he did that. He came out of retirement, came back, and what else? He also, oh, like, say this point I said was like I wrote it out as the weight of Civil War. Now by that I mean, to me, Civil War is maybe one of the most emotional movies out of the series, out of the MCU. We had a lot of stuff going on between Captain America, Iron Man, T'Challa, and Bucky Barnes, right? They were the quote unquote stars of the show. But it came down to the point to where Clint, he actually carried some emotional weight himself. Like, it came down to the point to where he was fighting his bestie. What else was he fighting his bestie? And it came down to the end of the movie. He came out of retirement to help the Avengers, but at the end he ended up losing. He ended up having to go to jail on the raft in the middle of the ocean. You know, so people don't really think about Clint being on that. It was just more so the Tony Stark and Captain show. You know, but he ended up going to jail for 2 years along with Ant-Man and I can't say Wanda because Wanda escaped, but it was just more so Hawkeye and Ant-Man. So they were locked up. So he ended up losing trying to fight in Civil War. And that was a point to where I was like, okay, he's done everything. He has kind of given us more, but he ended up losing. So I kind of felt some type of way there. But I want to kind of fast forward into the mystery of this Ronin character, because I think I made it a point last time to say we didn't watch this commercial. Grace is smiling because she knows where this is gonna go. Right?
Yes.
So say you didn't watch this commercial because they revealed who the Ronin was in the commercial in the trailer, which I'm not mad at. I'm not gonna hate that reveal, but say you didn't see the commercial and you happen to go to the bathroom when Widow was having the holographic Zoom call with the other Avengers, just to say they don't know what's going on with Clint and where he's at and who he's taking out. Like, say you didn't see this part, right, in the movie theater. We get to Tokyo, right? You see a hooded black figure take out the whole entire, or a whole entire Yakuza gang or Yakuza clan solo, all by himself with nothing but a sword, right? And it comes down to the end of that scene. You see him sitting in the street, and before he reveals himself, if you were in this moment and you had missed all of that I mentioned before, you're shaking. You're like, who is this? This is, for me, it possibly another villain. You know what I'm saying? It's like, oh my goodness, this is
Yep.
somebody else that the Avengers has to deal with, you know? And he takes his hood off and you see that it's Clint, and by this point you're like, shit, this guy is badass. Okay, first, yes, I know that he was super badass with a bow and arrow, but now you see, um after 5 years of not being blipped, right? We get a feel for this character now that he is a swordsman to the point to where he is taking out gangs left and right, and that just adds to who he is, to his strengths, you know. And if by this point the crowd still thinks he's weak, I don't know how they can believe that this person is weak, you know. And I think now we're here to the hashtag heartstrings, okay?
Heartstrings.
Because when it came down to um, the Avengers, right? In game specifically, he loses his best friend, okay? He loses Agent Romanoff. Bummer. Hashtag heartstrings. I'm gonna keep throwing that up that whole entire time, Grace.
See, after the first
Right.
round, like you have to.
Right.
You have to. You
Right.
guys don't get it. He said it like in 3 times in one sentence.
I sure did. I sure did. And then, like, after the initial Hulk snap, he gets a call and he gets to speak to his wife for the first time because she had been blipped away for 5 years. And right there, hashtag heartstrings. You know, you feel for him right there, you know? And then lastly, the movie ends with, again, Big Brother Clint and Wanda sitting by the lake and sharing a moment about their loved ones. Now, with these moments that I've mentioned here, along with everything else that's going on in these movies, I feel like Clint has not only shined as far as what he's capable of, but also he's been carrying a lot of emotional weight to these movies here, you know? And that's why I was actually excited to see that Disney Plus was coming out with the Hawkeye series, you know? And the fact that the Hawkeye series is more so about like this Ronin character, that which we're gonna get to in a second. I feel like this shows that he is actually one of the strongest, if not the strongest character in the MCU. And by strongest, like I said before, it's not more so strength. It's not by intelligence like Tony Stark and the Hulk, but this is more so strongest as a strong character in the MCU, and I feel like he deserves a show. And I told Grace last week that if anything, this show is giving us what Black Widow didn't, and I feel like this is going in the right direction, where I was more so hoping for more with Widow, because yes, Widow is another human being caught up in this Avengers universe, but so is Clint, and I was expecting a little bit more there, but they're actually giving us more here in this series, and I'm happy that Feige decided to do this. And I knew once this was going to be done, Disney is not going to invest in putting out a bad show, okay? They're going to take the time, write out good scripts, plot lines, and everything like that. Which by now, by episode 4, we're gonna get to it, but shit is getting real. I'm sorry I squeaked, but I got too excited, and I know Grace is excited
Voice
to talk
broke.
about.
That's just how intense things are getting.
Right,
Well,
Grace is
honestly,
excited. I'm
like,
sure.
oh,
Go for
I'm
it.
you have
Yeah,
no idea.
yeah.
No idea. But just kind of leaning back on a couple of things that you mentioned, I think the decision to make this a show, I so support it because overall we're just getting so much more screen time with this character who, much like Black Widow has been on like like on the sidelines for a lot of these movies just because, it's easier to be drawn by, Thor's hammer or Cap's pecs or Iron Man's like um but and something this was initially like Hawkeye I believe or I'm sorry not Hawkeye what's the actor what's the actor that plays Clint.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
I'm asking
Jeremy
you.
Renner. Jeremy
There
Renner.
you go. I'm like, help me out here. I believe initially he was contracted to do a film, but then they switched gears into a show and he agreed and like, everyone was all for it. And, I think one of the things that we both agreed on Black Widow, the very few things that we did agree on is that the biggest flaw is that she only had one movie. And obviously, it took way too much time for that movie to come out. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's really the issue because they had to cram in so much stuff that we should have gotten in several different films. And maybe if it was like a TV show like this, we'd be able to see these characters in a much more intimate way, very similar to the way Loki kind of served for
Yeah,
us as well.
definitely.
So definitely Disney, Marvel, you guys are like killing it with the TV shows. I am loving it because it's like we're getting, 7 hours of a film
Right,
essentially because it's
right,
that quality for sure.
right.
Absolutely.
So yeah, like, and that just falls back onto what we talked about in a previous podcast, as far as like this all series so far that Disney Plus has come out with, not just Marvel, but I'm saying everything uh from Star Wars to even like National Geographic. Like I even caught some of this Will Smith thing that they just posted up there, and everything is super high quality to the point to where you are just having low key movies broken down into chapters,
I feel like we're
and
treating the system.
right, right,
Yeah, it's
like I don't
either
have to
three
go to
hour
like
long
AMC,
movies
right,
or
exactly.
yeah, exactly, or this.
Yeah,
One or the other, guys. Yeah,
so
absolutely.
with everything that I just said as far as this trial, I believe I've come up with a pretty good case as to why Clint Barton, aka Hawkeye, is the strongest Avenger or one of the strongest characters. And if y'all were to think otherwise, I'd be happy to oblige a conversation. I won't keep it heated on here just because I can't hear y'all, So I don't want to argue back and forth with text, So I'll acknowledge it, and Grace, I can bring Grace in, and she can acknowledge this. But this is how I feel, and I think Grace, maybe do you feel the same way or no?
I feel like you're just ready to convert everybody. You're like the Catholic Church
Yeah,
back in.
yeah, man. You don't need powers,
Like,
man. It's time for the regular people out here, So let's.
I think, yeah, no, I think, court is adjourned. We have made our point, guys.
Yes,
Like, he has earned his place. There's a reason why he has been in the past, like, 10 years he's been for since phase one. And I'm
yeah,
happy to see that we're getting a lot of more content for him in this
definitely.
new phase. So,
Oh,
absolutely.
one last point before we get into episode 1, okay? Because I brought this up last time, and this is something that I do want to bring up here right now. The reason why I kept bringing up this quote unquote Big Brother Hawkeye to Wanda Maximoff is because with all these instances, I feel like with the direction that Wanda is going right here, right now in the MCU, like we can see she's going down a dark path. But it can come to the point to where I feel as if anything, maybe in the multiverse and that madness, or if it goes beyond that movie, I feel like Clint may be that staple to bring her back to reality, because right now she's getting lost in, I won't say an imagination, but she's getting lost to another reality, another possible universe. We don't know, but I feel like with their relationship, I feel like he may be the one to bring her back to the sacred timeline. Let's just say that.
I love that. Honestly, I mentioned this in the last one too. I love the highlights of their relationship because I think it's something that a lot of people don't bring up. It's not really a conversation I've seen like on like a lot of things I've looked at.
Right.
And it's something that I think, you see in every film that they're in together.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of Endgame, the film, starts to wrap up with a little like, hashtag heartstring
Right.
moment.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And especially with like the losses that they've both experienced, I feel like they're, like the love and the rapport that they have together. If anyone at this point is going to be able to bring her back down, like she doesn't know Doctor Strange like
Right.
that.
Right.
Cap is gone. It's like he's kind of the last remaining one that I can think of really that
Mm-hmm.
could still have a hold on her to bring her back into,
Precisely. Yeah.
yeah. So absolutely love it.
So, if anything, I may just clip this and just hold this for later. And if it comes true, I'm posting it on the IG. Just throwing it out there. But
That is all.
moving on to Hawkeye, the series. Okay, episode 1. I have the image of the poster, which you see him, Kate Bishop, and is this pup called Pizza Dog?
Pizza Dog. It's called Pizza Dog in the comics, and his name is Pizza Dog here. Yes.
Okay, I'm not mad because me being that I have a pup now, and I've actually kind of seen things with my girls, other pets, family pets, and them being fed like human food, and I've kind of made it a point to feed my dog like regular pet food. But like seeing this pizza dog eat pizza, I happen to be one of those viewers just like I don't think that's good for
He's
for
gonna
the
have like the
animal,
poops or
you know?
something. I don't know. Yeah. Absolutely. So there's something about this series that you see right from the bat, honestly,
Mhm.
is just, and that I love, is there's so many ties to what is like the primary, I think, source for, like comic source for this entire series, which
Mhm.
is I think it's like a Hawkeye run from 2012 to 2015.
Mhm.
And so there's a lot of little tidbits that they definitely pull. Pizza Dog is one of them.
Mhm.
The use of like bro everywhere with these like tracksuit mafia guys that we're gonna see down the road,
Yeah.
and then with the introduction as well. And that's something that I think it's super cool. I feel like they're just highlighting all of the different areas that they're drawing a lot of the inspiration for this series.
Yeah, I'm currently pulling up some of these covers of the comic books that you sent to me, and kind of like just looking at them, right? It's super dope that they are sticking with the same, let's say, artistic direction of the comics. You know, they're not changing any color schemes. They're not changing any fonts. Like I mentioned it before when they announced the zombie series that's coming out, and when Grace sent me the cover before, it's like it's identical here, and they're doing the same thing here with this Hawkeye series, which I feel is super dope.
Absolutely. And I think also when it's in that intro, you see a lot of like like use of geometrical figures, the
Mm-hmm.
purple hues. So I love those homages that they kind of bring in from the comics because obviously that's the main source material for a lot of these things. They obviously change a lot of things to fit the narrative we're kind of fitting right now and the
Yeah.
storyline that we're already creating, but it's super cool to see just such a direct like tie. The same thing with like the zombies. I think we
Yeah.
said show, right? Like the zombie show that's gonna
Right.
come up pretty
Right.
soon. Yeah.
Precisely. Okay. So, without further ado, I feel like I've talked enough at the beginning. Grace, why don't you go ahead and dive right into episode 1, please?
Gladly,
Yeah.
gladly. So episode one, honestly, I think it's probably one of the most um what's the like action packed filled like first episode we've gotten for a lot of the series that we've seen so far.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot happened in that first episode. So it starts off with the introduction. We are in 2012, like minutes before the invasion,
Mm-hmm.
the Battle of New York, all of that.
Yeah.
We see Kate, obviously, like there's some issues going on with the husband and wife, so Eleanor and Derek.
Mm-hmm.
And so already we see so many things. We see the fact that this family is like filthy rich.
Mm-hmm.
Like their problems are like, oh my god, we're gonna have to sell the penthouse.
Right.
And then we see obviously like the conflict between Eleanor and Derek, and of course we lose Derek
Mm-hmm.
presumably
Mm-hmm.
on the Battle of New York, but it sets up in a way where it just doesn't feel right. Like you already have some suspicions with Eleanor because, well, the last time we see Derek on screen, he's like, oh, I'm gonna head downstairs, and then the last time we see Eleanor right before the attack on New York is she says, oh, I'm gonna go downstairs, and
Right.
then it's quite a while before she appears again. Like as a mom, if there's an invasion, you better believe I'm screaming for my child to make sure I
Right.
know where she is. Is she okay? Like, unless she's trying to not draw attention to something that she's doing,
Right.
downstairs, or, involvement with Derek's disappearance, like, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't add up for her to
With
have taken so long?
Yeah, and with that, because I know you sent the IMDb of the amount of episodes that he's in, and I know it's kind of winding down because right now we're in episode 4 and there's 2 more episodes, but it
Yes.
said that he's in multiple episodes, correct?
Absolutely. So I'm happy you brought that up because honestly, I think we missed that on like the last episode.
Yeah.
So there you go. We're bringing it in this one. So there's a lot of things that I'm suspicious. I'm assuming have been changed because, of course, like scheduling issues.
Mm-hmm.
COVID has been a big, obviously, impact for everything, and in the movie industry was not immune to that.
The
And
effing
so,
pandemic, man. Jeez.
damn, no, like this series was originally supposed to have 8 episodes.
Right.
The reason I went on IMDb is because, of course, we assumed Yelena Belova was going to be in every single episode.
Mm-hmm.
And back in July when Black Widow came out, obviously with that end credit scene, it's a very big hint that her being involved in Hawkeye, since we see Val kind of setting her up on this path of like hunting him down under the
Mm-hmm.
guise of like, oh, this is the man responsible for Nat's death,
Right.
right?
Right.
So episode 1 rolls out. We don't see her at all. So
Mm-hmm.
of course I'm over here like, I expected something. She is not here. I'm gonna go back on IMDb, and it was now said that she was gonna be in 4 out of the 6 that are coming
Mm-hmm.
out. So I was like, okay, we're gonna see her in episode 3.
Mm-hmm.
Episode 3 rolls out last week on Wednesday. I watched at 5 a.m. As you guys know, she was not there. So I go back on IMDb because they think I'm not watching. They think I'm
It's
not
coming
keeping
down.
track.
Yep. Yep.
Mama keeps receipts.
Oh, for sure.
And I look, and it's still saying she's showing up in 4 out of the 6. So I'm like, this is suspicious. But on top of that, I noticed that the actor playing the dad here, Derek, was listed to appear, and I believe I sent the screenshot, but
Mm-hmm.
5 out of the 6 episodes, and we've only seen him in 1. So we know that there have been, certain changes to how the script has had to play out because of, I'm sure, changes due to COVID, all of that. That's my
Right.
assumption.
Right.
And that's kind of what we're seeing. So, I mean, I'm loving the show so far. So I'm okay with the rewrites they had to do because honestly, I'm just enjoying it. My only beef is I expected Yelena to be in here from like start to finish. But
Yeah.
something,
Yeah.
it's coming out really well. I just want to call it out because I'm watching. Like I want you guys
We
to see it. Like we see
We
it.
see it.
We see it. But since I'm assuming, probably going to come into the picture at some point.
Yeah.
It's very similar to what we see happen in the comics. So in the comics, it's actually Eleanor who is assumed to be dead after a trip in, I think, like Boulder, Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
It's later learned that she was alive this entire time, and she's actually assisting one of Kate Bishop's rivals, who is Madame Mask, which I'm
Right.
going to get to in just a little bit. In the comics, along with all that happening, there's a point where I believe Kate is assuming her dad is involved in some way in her mom's disappearance. And so a lot of that is kind of, tasting very similar to what we're seeing in the show, with some minor things reversed, right? Like the dad is the one who's presumed dead. I'm either thinking he is dead and Eleanor was responsible, or he's actually alive and she's just responsible for his disappearance. So there's definitely more for us to figure out there. Eleanor definitely is coming off as someone much more sinister than we initially assume. And in the comics, of course, she is connected with Madame Mask. I'm assuming she's gonna just merge with that character, which we've seen happen a lot.
Yeah.
We saw it with Sylvie. We've seen it with Shang-Chi's dad. Like, I think she's like, her character as Eleanor the mom and Madame Mask are just kind of merge, and that's what we're going to see. And I think that would be so cool just because I think that's such an epic like character. Like the costume for her is just amazing. And if that is the character they're kind of playing her off to be, I really, really hope we see that iconic mask. Like that would just be so dope.
Well, I think I made it a point last time when we spoke. I'm trying to pull up the actress's name. Um, let's see, Hawkeye. I forgot her name. What is it, Grace? Do you know off the top of your head?
No, I do not.
Oh
I
my
do
goodness.
not.
Oh, here it is. Her name is Vera Farmiga. Okay, and again, she is playing Eleanor Bishop here. I'm gonna bring her back up because she was up here earlier. Now, when it comes down to this character, right? Not this character, but this actress. This actress is known for playing something sketchy. Okay, there's always something mysterious about her. She I would say is almost typecast into being that mysterious character, which she's not bad at playing. It's honestly it's always new. It's never the same. But like when I see her, especially in episode 1, I already know that she is not just a mom here. Okay,
100%. Yes.
there's something going on, and she's behind something. So,
Absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely.
no.
And then in episode one, of course, we get Armand the Third, who threatens her. We hear certain dialogue along the lines of like the Empire, and it alludes to the idea that she's built the empire she has built
Uh-huh.
under probably not so legal terms, maybe working with some mob bosses. It's kind of hinted later on in episode three, or I think it's episode two, three, one of those where maybe Kingpin coming down the road on this. And so we know that the empire that she has built
Yeah.
has been built under not the best conditions in
Right.
terms of this legality. She's probably involved with some bad people, all of
Mm-hmm.
that. And then Armand is dead, of course. There are like I think they've mentioned, right, it was like via sword,
Mm-hmm.
right, that they was.
Mm-hmm.
How would they know, by the way? I'm just saying, like, there's stab marks. Like, I would just assume that it's a knife, like, who's like, do you have input on
Yeah,
that?
that's true. Yeah, like
You know what
honestly,
I'm
well,
saying?
say
Like,
if watching this show, right? Because say we already before we even see Armand, we already know that Jack has stolen sword from this black market. Whatchamacallit. So when you see this stab wound, of course, as a viewer, we're gonna assume that it's by sword, by the sword.
absolutely.
But
Like, we're gonna assume, but for them to be
right.
like, it is a sword.
Right. For Kate Bishop, I want to pull her image up real quick because we haven't had a chance to talk about her. But when it comes down to Kate Bishop, it was just like there was no real detective skills. It was like he died by sword, and I know it. And
Yeah.
with that being said, I know that she has been training her whole life, whether if it's in martial arts or with a bow and arrow, but also as a swordsman by fencing. So who knows? She may be able to look at a wound and just know it to be, or know the difference between a knife wound, a knife stab, and a sword stab. I don't know. I'm just gonna say
Yeah.
it may be safe to assume.
Yeah. Yeah, you know what? I'll take that. I will roll with that. And like, this obviously points things towards Jack, because we know
Mm-hmm.
not only is he very interested in swords, but he's actually amazing, like
Mm-hmm.
an amazing swordsman.
Mm-hmm.
He is the swordsman from the comics. We're gonna dive into that a little bit later as
Okay.
well. But everything is primarily pointing towards Jack for sure in terms
Correct.
of Kate's perspective. Us, the viewers, the intelligent people that we are on the internet, were very suspicious of Eleanor from the gate. So I am honestly thinking, obviously we know he's involved as well, but she is probably the backbone to all of it.
Definitely, definitely.
Eleanor,
Because say
yeah.
at the end of the day, before we move on to episode 2, it didn't really episode 1 didn't end on this, but we did see pretty much an altercation between Eleanor and Armand. So we know that they have some, let's call it static, and then by the end of the episode he dies. So we can't necessarily put it all on Jack. I'm just going to say when it came down to Eleanor, Kate approached her, asked her what it was all about, and she kind of just played it off. So with that, it almost kind of
Yes.
showed us that she may be behind this. It may not just be Jack. They may be a quote unquote team in this situation.
Absolutely. And then, of course, early on in this episode, we also do see Clint
Mm-hmm.
at the Rogers. Is it called Roger the Musical?
Oh
Is that what the
yeah,
name
I
is? I
almost
think
forgot.
so.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The musical.
That is
Mm-hmm.
so funny.
Yeah.
And this is where we get our real introduction of him having the hearing aids in. I
Mm-hmm.
love the way that they explain it for this series. I think it's just really comical, and it just makes so much sense with all
Right.
the things that he's experiencing or has experienced, that there are some repercussions to that. Like, he is human. He's not, Cap with like the super soldier serum. He's
Mm-hmm.
not Iron Man protected in his metal. Like, he's vulnerable to all of the effects of being a superhero. So I thought that was pretty cool, and a very huge contrast to how we see it occasionally displayed in the comics.
Right.
I think, what I'm going to dive into, some dark stuff. Let's dive into the dark history in terms of how he's become deaf in the
Go
comics.
for it.
We've seen this character. Let me just bring it down. Okay, so we see Kazi, and I think he's also referred to as Kazimierz Zach, something like that. But we'll just call him Kazi for here.
Mm-hmm.
He does appear, I believe it's in episode 2, 3, alongside Maya, who's going to be Echo.
Mm-hmm.
And in the comics, he occasionally takes on the mantle, very similar to how we've seen like DC's Joker.
Mm-hmm.
He puts on like this white clown face, and he's referred to as like the clown. And so he's a very often like the a villain against like Hawkeye.
Yeah.
And in the comics, what happens is he sneaks into Hawkeye's apartment and stabs him in the ears with his arrows, which I think when I first heard that just sounds so gory,
Yeah.
so traumatizing. Like,
Right.
the thing that's caused you to go deaf is like your own arrows. Like, that's just really sad. And well, of course, like in this series, we're seeing Kazi come off as almost like the most mellow of the group. So we're
Mm-hmm.
most likely not going to see that storyline come across. But the contrast between how we see, that explained in the comics versus here is like, I think it's pretty funny.
Yeah.
And something else I mentioned last time is that he's also responsible for Girl's death. Girls is the
Wait, you didn't
individual
mention that Grills died.
in the
In
yes,
no, well,
I
yes, in the
did.
comics, but like, cause we just got introduced to Grills, and we still see him even in episode 4. But in the comics, they got Grills out
Yes,
of here.
yes. So in episode, I believe, right, episode 2 is where we see Girls. So Girls is Clint's apartment neighbor, so he lives in the same apartment complex as Clint in the comics. And yeah, Kazi, I think he's in that clown guys. I believe it's in the same incident where like he basically makes Clint deaf.
Mm-hmm.
He takes out Grills. So I hope this is not something that we're gonna see here. Grills, I think, is hopefully just gonna be that little comedic factor with
Right.
the
Yeah.
but
With
yes.
what's the LARP? Yeah, it's just like they're the
Yeah,
comic
yeah.
relief. Like if
I love
something were to
them.
happen to them, this it's kind of crazy. And oh, we got somebody commenting saying like, man, this is deep origin. And yeah, like say when it comes down to something like that, right? This is something that I would expect maybe like in a graphic novel, to where if it'll get bloody or something like that. But just hearing
Gonna
that he
say
goes
Marvel,
right,
yeah. Like,
you wouldn't
Marvel
expect
isn't
that,
deep. Marvel isn't, like, there's some pretty deep stuff that happens in the
right?
comics, and this is just one example. But when you contrast that to that little like montage we get to explain why he's having issues with his hearing, I just think that contrast is pretty funny.
Yeah,
So I wanted to bring it up because I thought that was pretty interesting, especially because we do see this character appear in this show. But definitely, I don't think we're going to be seeing him take on that clown guys. I feel like that's a little too DC for us here,
mm-hmm.
Especially with the tone that we're seeing with this series so far.
Well, let's say I kind of want to bring it back to like this poster here, because I have the official poster up of the Hawkeye character, and I didn't realize it until today that they shot the side to where he actually has the hearing aid in it.
Look
So
at that.
so it's like seeing that, and then when you're watching episode 1, when he's at this production and he kind of has his hearing aid off, he is like that adds to the comedy, because he knows what happened. Like he even mentioned like I think his kids asked what's wrong. He's like, Ant-Man wasn't even there. Like like what is going on?
So good.
So
See, It's so good. I feel like this episode established so many things. So many things. Obviously, it introduces like that he is losing his hearing.
Mm-hmm.
We see so much develop in terms of like Kate Bishop, her family, the mom.
Mm-hmm.
The idea that like the dad might be alive. If you don't see someone die on screen, is he really dead? That's like a cinema rule.
Definitely, definitely.
And on top of that, in this same scene where we are introduced to, obviously Clint's like loss of hearing,
Mm-hmm.
we also see that he is still mourning Nat's death,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think that's something that's so crucial, just as much as him dealing with the repercussions as Ronan. We're seeing him deal with the loss of Nat, and not just that, but his involvement, because he was there.
And you
He
said
saw it happen.
you
He was
mentioned before that this is 2 years after, like set two
2 years,
years
yeah.
after Endgame. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So that's something that we're definitely going to deal with as we continue on, and we'll dive into, I think, much more once we dive into episode 4, because I think they bring it up very plain and clear in
Mm-hmm.
that.
Oh,
So,
definitely. So,
mhm.
moving on. Episode 2. It's called Hide and Seek. Okay. Now we are introduced to the Tracksuit Mafia here, and yes, they're a quote unquote mafia and they're gangsters, but as of right now, they are adding to the comic relief. Like they're not scary. They're just a bunch of Russian guys that I feel like they kind of like whoever wrote this and put their whole bro kind of the atmosphere out here. It's funny just because it's like I hear this almost on a day to day, kind of like out here. But seeing this and watching episode 2, it opens with the Tracksuit Mafia. They have caught up with Kate Bishop. They found out where she um, lives, because we didn't really explain it as far as episode 1. But for those who've seen it, we know that it's come to the point to where Kate Bishop has the Ronin suit, and they've pretty much tracked her down, thinking that she's Ronin, right? Because we'll see further along in the series that the Tracksuit Mafia, they have a beef with Ronin, and did episode 1 end with Hawkeye saving her?
Yes, episode 1 ends with Hawkeye saving her, and then he like throws out that line, which for me is such a huge reference to like when Thor meets Guardians of the Galaxy in Infinity War. Like, who the hell are you?
Right,
Like when
right.
when he unveils her.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's how we see episode 1 end.
And in episode 2, I feel like this is where, or even with both so far up until this point, we're getting action movie vibes, okay? And I kind of broke it down before to where each series is kind of different, to where uh, Loki, I feel like it felt under like the sci-fi genre. We got WandaVision, that's kind of um, like a sitcom. And then Falcon and the Winter Soldier was a little bit more so on the action side, but here I think we're getting action comedy, like on some buddy cop type movie. Like you get the feel
Yes.
of these like two characters coming together and getting to know each other, and alongside with the action, we're getting the comedy, and we get that so far in episode 1 and 2.
And wrapped up in a holiday Christmas theme
Right.
on top of it
Mm-hmm.
all. So there's like so many reasons to just love this show.
Yeah. Before I bring it up, I do want you to kind of go into. I'm just gonna call it the Avengers Tower, as far as where it's at today.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So I believe this, I believe this is actually something that's referenced in episode 1. So it's when they're gathering all those supplies to deal with like their cuts and bruises and scrapes
Mm-hmm.
after their fight against the Tracksuit
Right.
Mafia. And Kate Bishop is like super excited. She's like, oh my god, are we gonna go to like the Avengers compound? Are we gonna do this? And that's where we hear Clint say, Tony sold the Avengers compound a couple years ago. And I
Mm-hmm.
feel like this is such a reference to what we have already heard and established in Loki,
Mm-hmm.
with that little Easter egg of Kang Enterprises, like the tower.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm referring to that scene that we see in like the last few episodes of Loki. We initially see it in when he meets all the other Lokis in the void.
Mm-hmm.
Initially, a lot of us, and I was definitely in that group, assumed it was just Avengers Tower, right?
Right.
But then in following episodes with other like shots, you're able to see, very clearly Kang.
Mm-hmm.
So Qeng. And so for those of you guys who don't know, since I got my notes, I'm going to just bring them up and make sure I reference it all correctly. Let me see.
Because like while you're looking, I just want to bring up because say in this episode, this is where they're having a moment in a diner, and she mentioned something about Avengers Tower, and he made it clear he's like, no, Tony sold that, So by
Yes,
this point,
yes,
we know that he sold it, and I brought up the fact that we saw that they were getting stuff out of there in Spider-Man: Homecoming, so we already know that the Avengers Tower is no longer part of the Avengers or Tony Stark. So far, this belongs to somebody else. And with what we've seen in Loki, it's almost safe to assume that
that's the storyline that
yeah,
we're leaning on.
that's where we're
Yeah,
going.
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the comics, that company, so King Enterprises, is owned by Mr. Griffin, who is a variant of Nathaniel Richards, aka King the Conqueror. So basically, he's stuck, like, I think, a couple thousand years before his own time, and he decides to build his own empire, in our present, if you will. And so he buys the tower from Tony, and this is just such a draw to the fact that Kang is just coming at any point in the storyline. We've already seen him in Loki, and now we're seeing, hints and pieces to suggest that he's already in this world that we're seeing in the back, in the background, in like the apart from the events that we're currently seeing. So it was a very like clear reference to that, and I thought that
Mm-hmm.
was pretty cool because we just know that he's involved. We know we're going to see him in Quantum Mania, and it's assumed that he's just the big bad overall for this phase
Yeah, this
overall.
phase. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Is it safe to say like this isn't even a phase? Would you say this is more so because like we had they called it an Infinity War saga. Would you just say this is the multiverse is like the next saga in this
Oh, for
series?
sure. Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So who knows how many phases are going to be within
Right.
this saga? I mean,
Correct.
is
Correct.
this saga like a significant like thing? Is it three? You know what I
Right.
mean? Like, is
Right.
it someone someone can tell us that? But
Mm-hmm.
yes, exactly. So being that this is the first phase of this new saga, if you will, it's really building up the idea, and we're having a lot of different snippets of this character who we are assuming is going to be the big bad.
Yes. So I
Mm-hmm.
want to kind of fast forward into episode 3 because this is where like episode 2 ends with Clint going to meet with the tracksuit mafia to clear Kate Bishop's name, and both of them end up getting captured. And this is where we ended up meeting Maya Lopez. Okay,
Yes.
and with Maya Lopez, is this the image I want to bring up? Yeah, with her, I didn't know just because I didn't read the comics, but this is the introduction into the storyline of this Echo character. And when it came down to when Marvel announced their series of shows that's coming out in 2022, I realized that Echo was the name of one of them. So she's like, just from what we've seen so far, it's safe to say that even after this series, she has something going forward. And now with the success of this show, I want to know. I'm more curious just to see where her story is gonna go.
Yes, and Echo is supposed to be like a direct spin-off of this Hawkeye series. So I'm assuming like wherever her story ends at the end of, these 6 episodes that we're going to see, that's kind of where Echo's going to continue. That's
Right.
my assumption. But
Right.
yeah, super excited. Her character, I mean, we start off by seeing this like flashback to when she was younger, acknowledge the fact that she is deaf, seeing like the different struggles she's had,
Mm-hmm.
her connection and the love with her dad. And so I know just how much you love them flashbacks. I was
Yeah.
like, this
Yeah. I
is
needed
like
it.
his bread and butter.
I needed it. But say when it comes down to the flashback, I brought it back up, the image that we spoke about before. I just want to just kind of make it clear because initially when I watched episode 3, I thought she was working with the tracksuit mafia, as in like kind of hired them, but this image is of her dad kind of kneeling down and talking to her, and he is wearing a tracksuit. So it's clear that he is in the tracksuit mafia, and she was kind of born into it. You know, she's not like a separate
Yeah,
entity. It's
exactly.
like she's actually in the tracksuit mafia, but she's wearing black leather. You know, super
It's a
stealth.
family business.
Yeah.
Yeah, so in episode 3, it's kind of established, and we see a little bit more of it, or hear just a little bit more of it in episode as well.
Right.
Is that once her dad was killed, and we know that he was killed by the Ronin, which is how she's connected to Hawkeye's storyline.
Mm-hmm.
She essentially takes his place as like the management for this sector or division
Yeah.
of like tracksuit mafia members, but that there is someone above her who is being heavily hinted to be the kingpin. So we saw like a reference to it in the flashback where I believe like he's referred to as like her uncle or the uncle. We see that like referred again towards the end of episode 3 as well. So it's still kind of like inching towards like his appearance, and a lot of us or everyone's assuming it's going to be the same kingpin that we see in the is it the
Yeah,
Daredevil. I'm gonna let you take it on
listen,
this
I'm ready.
one.
I'm leaning
I'm
in.
gonna
I'm
let you
leaning
take it
on
on
the
this
mic
one.
just because they made the announcement this week. Okay, we didn't have this last week, but they made the announcement that the actor Charlie Cox is coming back into the MCU. So, with that being said, I feel like it's almost safe to say, I won't say 100%, but safe to say that every other character that we saw in these Netflix series,
Netflix.
Netflix, yeah, let's call them the Netflix because they're almost fluky. You know what I'm saying? But anywho, they're almost fair game. So with that being said, as far as you bring up Kingpin, now the actor Vincent D'Onofrio comes back into the conversation, and he played a really good Kingpin in that series. You know, he was super dark. Like he had a super dark background, and I feel like if it wasn't for Daredevil, because I loved the Daredevil character and how they made it different from the Ben Affleck Daredevil, but even the villain Kingpin was just so good, and if he makes his way into the MCU, I'm listen. If I haven't said I'm all in before, I'm 100% all in right now.
We have sold our souls to Marvel,
Yes,
guys. It's just like
definitely.
we're done. Like we have all the subscriptions. We know what they're doing. We're in. We're done. Like it's okay. We're happy. Like what's it? We're happy slaves to this. It's fine.
So
Indentured servants.
so we do have a comment. It says like say so does every Marvel show slash character get tied to a team or another origin of a character? And he says this is a noob question. I wouldn't necessarily say it's tied to a team, but I would say right now Marvel Studios they're more so tying it all to one universe, okay? And
Yeah.
like say throughout the years we've gotten different things from the Fox Studios Marvel to the Sony Marvel, and now it's now all coming together under one umbrella. So I wouldn't say each character is necessarily tied to a team, but I would say each character now is being tied to the same universe, which is what everybody's been asking for 10, 20 years or so.
And I'll add to that. And I'll add to that,
Right.
because I believe initially, like the Netflix shows, like the Marvel Netflix shows that were released, the idea was that, they were going to be brought into like the big battle towards the end of the Infinity Saga. That was what
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people were hoping for. There was a lot of talk that that is what was going to happen. And I think it was more contractually and, things like that, a lot
Right.
of moving parts on the back end that
Right.
prevented that from occurring, because I know like Agents of Shield, a lot of that storyline aligned very well with
Definitely.
what the movies were
Yep.
doing, which
Mm-hmm.
I know people loved. You who love the
Mm-hmm.
continuity, I know,
Yep.
like it was done very well, and at some point it was just kind of lost in the background. But with obviously Marvel, Disney adopting, all the other titles, it's opened the door, especially with us venturing into the multiverse of madness and just the idea of different universes,
Mm-hmm.
for us to just merge things together where one, it just feels so much more soothing to the soul to know it's somehow cohesive in a
Mm-hmm.
very uncohesive way, but it makes sense and
Yeah,
we're rolling with it.
correct.
So now with the Disney Plus shows and series, these are meant to specifically be very intertwined and linked to the films we're going to be seeing in this new phase. So hopefully that clarifies everything for you. Thank you for watching us. I don't know if this is a new
This is. They
person,
just
but
joined
we are
yesterday. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
welcome aboard. Welcome to the fandom.
And I think the one thing that I won't say it's a concern because knowing what Marvel Studios done so far, I'm not worried. But when it comes down to now bringing, let's say, Daredevil back to the light, my only question is, are they going to dumb it down? Just because the Daredevil series, it was dark, it was bloody. It's not Disney Plus approved. You know, if they're gonna keep it on a streaming service, I feel like Feige's just like, yo, we're gonna keep that on Netflix, you know, and then going further, um, I'm just curious to see where they're going to take it. If it's more so, I'll respect it if it's just like a cameo because I'm already suspecting a
Right.
cameo in No Way Home. But all in all, when it comes down to it, it's a step in the right direction.
And you know something, just on that same note, I feel like they kind of do have a little bit of that leverage to maybe bring in some of that darkness that was seen in the Daredevil like series.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you look at Captain America, and I'm sorry, the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, the
Mm-hmm.
series, I mean, the scenes we got in that were very like, am I still in Marvel? Like, am I watching something
Right.
that should be in the DC universe? Because and I'm referring to that scene where, who we end up knowing to become like the hero, what's his name, U.S. agent,
Mm-hmm.
when he kills that one guy with the shield, like
Right.
that scene, you did not expect it. That
Correct.
is not like the MO of Marvel, which I kind of like. And I feel like the cool thing about the shows is because the shows match in terms of cinematography, the lighting, the feel, the tone,
Definitely.
music, all of that
Mm-hmm.
to those character stories. And that's so cool because when you look at characters like the Falcon and Winter Soldier, um, in this case, Hawkeye and Kate Bishop, it's very different than say like, WandaVision or even Loki. So
Right.
it's something that I think we have the open door to then adopt that same like, dark and broodiness that we saw in Daredevil on the Netflix show for
I'm
sure.
not trying to get a Snyder cut of like any of these series. If one of these directors wants to go dark, please Disney, just let them have the freedom to keep it dark. And like Grace, she made a great point. Like I almost totally forgot about uh, the new Captain America taking out the dude with the shield. I was like, oh shit, it did get bloody just for a second, you know?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
I totally forgot that. But we got sidetracked. We're coming back
Let's bring it on back. Let's
to
bring it on
episode
back.
3. Now I am going to bring up the image of the Pym arrow, and I think I made it a point to say that with that being said, because this scene it follows a chase which was pretty comical. I really enjoyed it, but it came down to asking the question of how involved is Hank Pym with any entity. I won't say the Avengers or anybody, or even with Clint, but we know Hank Pym to be more so uh, careful with who he shares his technology with. Like, if anything, he only wanted Scott Lang and his daughter Hope to have it, but now we see Hawkeye with a Pym arrow that just he launches as a trick arrow. He has it like in his trick arrow little satchel there, you know, and I was just curious. It left me a curiosity, like where is Hank Pym in this universe, you know?
Yeah, and I mentioned last time too, like I feel like I can so see this connection with Clint and Scott Lang and Hank Pym because, the three of them have very difficult stories when it comes to their families, the relationship they have with their daughters,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like Scott Lang and Clint have such an inverted experience when it comes to the snap, right?
Yeah.
Clint lost his family for 5 years, and then we have Scott Lang who lost 5 years of being in his kid's life.
Correct.
And let me just add to that, which I didn't mention last time around, is that he had already lost like 5 years of his kid's life when he was locked up. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? Because we saw that in the first Ant-Man. So the both of them, like all three of them, have really had some rough times when it comes to the relationship with their family.
Wait,
And so I see a lot of common ground for them to get connected.
can I counter that real fast?
Oh,
Just
go
because
ahead.
when it comes down to, I know we're talking about Hawkeye, but I do want to talk about Scott Lang just for 1 second. When it comes down to Scott Lang, he was in the quantum realm for, was it 5 hours?
For him, 5 hours, but it still looked like for him, like he didn't experience the loss of time. But when he came back, his daughter is 5 years older. Like he
Right.
has lost that experience with his daughter, seeing her grow up, and the fact that he had already lost time from her life early in the age. I feel like this is just so it just adds to that, and I feel
Right.
like that's a common ground for him and Clint Barton to kind of get connected. So I definitely see how that technology can be passed down and how they somehow,
Like
post the
connected
events
or
of
something like
Endgame can,
that. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
exactly,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. So I see that overlap for sure.
Okay. All right. So let's talk about Jack. Okay.
Before we dive into Jack, because
Okay.
I got a lot
Let
to
me
say
take
about Jack.
Jack off of the screen.
Take it off, bring back that pin arrow. So last year we talked about how obviously there's so many trick arrows, and I think that's part of the fun when it comes to this episode, and the next episode as well, and as I'm sure we're gonna see in more. It's just all the different degrees. Like we saw the plunger arrow,
Mm-hmm.
we saw like the USB arrow make a comeback because we did see it in Avengers,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And I mentioned last time, like how in the comics they also have like a boomerang arrow that I'm curious if we're gonna see. Episode 4 mentions that
They
boomerang
when
arrow,
when
and
when
I
they
just
when she
wanted
said
to
it,
say,
I knew it. I knew you were excited. I was like, once
oh,
she said it, Grace is gonna go off.
so much that I said last time around, like just happened in some way, shape, or form. Like this episode, I don't think I've ever made more noise watching a TV show in my life. Like I'm like I was right when
Right.
they bring up like. So hopefully we get to see it. Maybe that wasn't just a little like tidbit. Like hopefully we get to see it. But I just wanted to make that quick little nudge that Grace was right.
So Grace, you are right, and I'm not opposed to it just simply for the fact that I feel like we see a bond growing between these two, okay? Between
Yeah.
Hawkeye and Kate Bishop. And you've mentioned in the past that this could necessarily be, by the end of this series, like a passing of the mantle. And when it comes down to it, I won't say by the next episode, but maybe by episode 6, I would assume that we may get a boomerang arrow and he be like, hey, Kate, you were right. This is awesome. I should have been had this in this arsenal. So
Yes.
I'm not
Yes.
I'm not
I
mad.
love
I'm
it.
not mad at that. All right.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So are you ready now? Can we
Oh yeah, we
can
can go in.
can we
Yeah,
dive
let's go. Let's
into
do it. Let's
this
do it.
Jack character? Because we briefly mentioned him earlier, and we now know him to be the swordsman. Okay, because it was in episode 2 to where we find out that he does have some type of skills. They had like a little fencing competition, and he was low key about showing off his abilities, but by the end of that episode, like she knew that he was faking it, and she knew that there's more behind it. And in this episode, episode 3, we see it by the end. But before we even get to that ending, I want to bring up that comic book cover that we had before, and you kind of dive into the swordsman real quick.
Yes. So when I did kind of my research behind this character and dove into a few of the comics that he's involved in, it was actually pretty cool to see that he's involved and connected with a lot of people we have seen already. So Clint Barton being one of them, Wanda, and also Mantis. So it is in the comics that he's actually the person who taught like little boy Clint how to use not just like swords but also like archery. It was later like what's the word, retcon that someone else ended up teaching him archery, but originally it was also him. But he is very much has been a mentor to him like in Clint's youth.
Mm-hmm.
They were both involved with like a circus. Clint got so good at swords that he was even part of the swordsman's act, right? That's Jack.
Yeah.
While they're on that circus, Clint sees Jack stealing money from the circus, which causes him to start like running away,
Mm-hmm.
and Jack thinks that he, kills Clint when he falls down from something that he kind of cuts with his sword.
Right.
We obviously know that's not the case because Clint grew up to become Hawkeye, right?
Mm-hmm.
After Jack left the circus, he was involved with a lot of crime. He tried to infiltrate the Avengers. He felt that was going to help elevate the level of crime that he was involved with, but they kind of saw right through him. And so he kind of went back and forth. Eventually, he came back to try to join the Avengers with some actual pretty good intentions. Like he really wanted to kind of turn a new leaf and do some good.
Mm-hmm.
There was back and forth a lot with them, but eventually Mantis was involved in him coming back into the Avengers, really believed in his ability to do good. He was absolutely like in love with her. He dies actually saving her from, I forget who is the one who ends up killing him, but he dies, trying to save her, and that's when Mantis like realizes that she actually does love him as well. We I mentioned
Can I stop you
yes.
just for a second? Just because to our viewers and especially our new viewers, because I know they're kind of new to the situation. Say when it comes down to, because she just mentioned Mantis. If you're familiar with Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, that is the woman with the antlers. Okay, I know we're kind of throwing some names out there, so I just wanted to be clear because right now I have the image of Jack sitting on the couch, and we're like, who? Somebody could be like, "Who's Mantis?" And Mantis
Yeah.
is that person from the second Guardians, and she was also in Infinity War and Endgame. So I just wanted to kind of clear
Yes.
that up for everybody.
She's the empath that looks like this really cute larva
Yeah,
looking thing.
yeah, yeah.
And it's funny because in the comics, she's actual like a celestial Madonna. I mentioned it in our WandaVision breakdown because she marries like this elderly tree in the
Mm-hmm.
same comic that Wanda marries Vision. But a lot of overlap with the thing. So since Swordsman wasn't really a person I was really, familiar with prior to this show, is so cool to see that he was actually connected with a lot of different characters we've seen already.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm wondering, because we know he's involved with some, with the tracksuit mafia. We know that there are, links and ties with bad people that he has. I'm wondering if he's going to have a similar story where, he's evidently a bad guy
Mm-hmm.
and kind of shifts and, turns over a new leaf. So I'm very curious to see if that's going to mimic what we kind of see in the comics.
Well, we already get some like shadiness from episode one, and even if he wasn't shady, I honestly don't like his mustache. Okay, his mustache is definitely on some. Hey, I'm a villain. You know what I'm saying? Be on the lookout. And
Absolutely.
I got my eye on Buddy. You know what I'm saying? Like I see
Oh,
him.
he's
Right,
involved.
he's
Yeah, we
definitely
know
involved
that.
in something.
Yeah.
And say episode three or no, episode two, he showed some type of quote unquote step dad type situation to where he read a book and he was trying to relate, but she sees through it, and us as a viewer, we see through it. And here, I won't go into episode four, but this episode ends with him holding Ronan's sword to his throat. So by this point, by the end of this episode, you're just like, oh shit, it's about to go down between Hawkeye and the swordsman here.
And, obviously when we did our last episode, we hadn't seen episode 4 yet.
Mm-hmm.
So we of course assumed like, oh, maybe there was going to be some exposure to their, backgrounds being linked or something like that, because we really don't know too much about Clint's life before he was with Shield. Really,
Mm-hmm.
like all we really know of him is from that point forward. We don't even know where he learned archery
Mm-hmm.
exactly or learned his skills. So we were very curious if we were going to see a whole like, "Ooh, I know who you are" type of a thing, and it
Right.
doesn't seem like that's the case. But it's really cool to see these characters interacting in this series, especially knowing that they have a lot of history in the comics.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping for, if anything, because we're about to go into episode four, but I was kind of hoping to see it start off with the knife or the sword is to Clint's throat, and then somehow, because that house is filled with other swords, you know what I'm saying? So if
Yes.
anything, a sword fight between Hawkeye, aka the Ronin, versus the swordsman. That's what I was kind of hoping for.
We were both hoping for that,
Right.
but the alternative option is what ended up happening, which was, or this is going to just be like one of those moments that gets built up, and at the end of it's just like, oh hey, Clint, fully, and we continue,
Yeah.
and that's exactly what we saw, which I think
Mm-hmm.
we were like not leaning toward as much. We were definitely like, oh yeah, it's going to be a battle first, and then there's going to be some type of like conversation going on after,
Mm-hmm.
but we were wrong on that front.
Right. So episode 4, it's called uh Partners. Am I right?
Oh,
And
yes. But real quickly, before we dive into episode four,
okay.
because something we kind of glanced over
Okay.
from episode three is the whole scene with Hawkeye and or Clint and Kate being locked up or being held captive by like the Cracksu Mafia. And the
Mm-hmm.
reason I just wanted to bring that up, especially going into episode four, is you really get something that highlights what we've talked about Clint already. We talked about it in the very beginning, which is just his ability to support his teammates and bring the best out of them. This is Kate's really first experience of seeing that, this route of a superhero that she wants to embark on isn't all, trick arrows and cool suits, right?
Mm-hmm.
She's very confident and well deserved. She's like a well decorated, archery.
Yeah.
She does
I wouldn't
archery,
even know the
yeah.
term, but yeah, I'm with it. The
Is there a
archist.
term? Yeah, the archist. The archer. There we go. She's a very well decorated archer. She is, excels in fencing and combat, all of that. So she's earned the right to be as confident as she is. But when she's dealing with what she's dealing with, like she really does not know the dangers that she's facing. And
For
this is
sure.
where you see her really experience it for the first time. And she is terrified. And I think the contrast from the confidence we've seen previously to this very drastic shift when Maya starts to choke her
Mm-hmm.
because she kind of loses it a little bit. Obviously, we know like her vendetta against the Ronin is kind of taking over her emotions and her
Mm-hmm.
judgment. It was a pretty dark shift, and something that I loved was Clint. He says to her like, "This is not the moment to be scared." And like
Right.
it's just I love to see that relationship because he cares for her. Like he's as annoyed as her of her as he is. Like
Right.
he has a very soft spot for Kate, and that's something we see develop so much in this new episode, which is why I just wanted to make sure we kind of highlighted that really
Well,
quickly from
yeah,
episode three.
because say before this series, it's like she hasn't been battle tested, okay? And Clint has been Hawkeye, and even the history of Clint before Thor, he's been in the field for years, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And now here comes Kate Bishop, uh, young 20 something college girl who just got basically suspended from college and doesn't know anything about anything. Yeah, she may have trained for something like this, but uh she hasn't been in this, you know? So him saying that, like, because he sees her like with, yes, she's excelled in these sports, but she doesn't know anything when it comes down to street level events. Okay, she's
Mm-hmm.
not street smart. And when it comes down to you're in the thick of it, what are you gonna do? And part of my language, Clint was just like, now's not the time to bitch up. Okay, if this is what you want, you better be ready. And you're here in it. You're here with me, and I'm telling you, we're gonna get out of this. So,
Such a parallel
right,
to the scene that we see with him and Wanda in Age of Ultron, right? Like you
right,
walk out that door, you're an Avenger. You stay here, that's totally fine. I'll send your brother. But if you walk out, like you need to man up.
yep,
You need to,
yep.
So I think such a highlight of what we were discussing in the very beginning. So,
Mm-hmm. So, episode 4. I don't have the title, but I have a picture of those two, Clint and Kate Bishop, in their ugly sweaters. Okay? Now, it's called Partners, am I right? Now, this episode specifically, it lightened up the mood, okay? A lot. This whole episode from the beginning was more so uh we know Clint is not able to be with his family, so she brought the family activities to him. Did the ugly sweaters, the movie marathon, putting up decorations in the, let's say this is another safe house, but at the end of the day, like this episode, it started off a little lighter than what we got in the past three with all the action packed moments, you know. And one thing that I found interesting here, okay, because I do want to come back to the ugly sweaters and all that and their festivities, but do you mind if we chat about Laura Barton for a second?
Literally, my notes, she's like the first thing I want to talk about because there's something I forgot to mention earlier, and we talked in the last one. Take it away, get us going because I
No, no, you
absolutely
know what?
love her.
Go ahead because this is someone that like I want to hear what you have to say first before I say what I say.
So I mentioned in the last, our first attempt, our
Mhm.
warm up, if you will,
Yeah.
of this episode, that something I love that was displayed is something we don't see very often, especially when we have an individual who has a job like Clint, where the stakes are high. There's a lot of danger involved, and I think it's natural to want to separate that work life from your family.
Mhm.
Um, but I think what brings them together is so much stronger, and that you see so much in this series overall is that she knows the history of the Ronin. She knows everything he's done, and she gets it. Like she doesn't make him feel um extra stress for losing the time with the kids because she understands like what he's doing is ultimately to protect the family because if obviously they find out he's the Ronin, they know of his family, we know
Correct.
that from episode 4.
Right.
That danger is going to find them, so she gets it, and I just love to see that she is so involved with that. And then we see it in episode 4 again, like they have their own little secret. I don't Are they
Here
speaking the
and
language, or is it a
this is
secret
where
language?
this is where I want to interject. Okay, just because so far, yes, throughout this whole universe, she has been a rock and she has been solid, and I have never known why. Okay, I could be like, how can this regular woman just be so good with everything that's going around? Now, when she was on, like, because this image that I have is her on the phone. This is her having the conversation with Clint, and she breaks down into another language so her kids can't hear. Now, this moment went from a regular homebody mom to she is a spy. She is something that, like, when it comes down to her being able to speak another language and understand everything that's going on with him worry free, like, she's like, oh yeah, go ahead, do your thing, don't worry about Christmas. Like, regular mom, no. Super spy mom,
Yeah. Yes.
understandable, yes.
You know something, this may be the key. Maybe this is why she gets it. Like maybe she's not a spy, but she has, maybe prior to becoming like a stay-at-home mom and just taking care of the family, which is a huge responsibility of itself.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe she had, she was kind of like, Sharon Carter, where she just worked with like the CIA or the
Correct.
FBI or something
Or
to
like
that
Shield,
effect, where she
maybe. Yeah.
gets the world,
Mm-hmm.
or even Shield.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, like how
Mm-hmm.
did they meet?
Yep.
Right. I love that, and I'm so curious to know if that's something that's going to be further
Yeah.
explored. Because how are they just going to like throw? I'm in my head, I'm like, she's just a ride or die, But I feel like this is so much more of a better explanation. I like that
If
idea. I feel like it would fit the story so
and
well.
if anything, initially for me, I feel like this this character Laura Barton, I don't have her name pulled up, her real name pulled up, but like this has been so far the one of the smaller roles, okay? Because everything that I've seen her in, she's like a main character and a main likable character. Like she's been like uh randomly this is gonna age me, but I remember her in the movie Good Burger, like from Nickelodeon. She was one of the crazies in the Crazy House that was kind
You're
of like
exposing
dancing
yourself,
around with
chill.
like Keenan and Kel, you know. But like even that with the roles, like she was Woman in Scooby Doo, and like she's had like other likable roles to where I see her here. And I get that like she's like the wife of Clint Barton, and that's what we know of so far. But now I'm expecting something more. When she broke out that language, whatever it was, because even my subtitles couldn't even tell me. It wasn't like she's speaking
Yeah, it
Russian.
looks like something they made up, right?
Right,
Yeah.
you know. So when it comes down to it, I was like, okay, maybe the MCU has something bigger for her, and we have yet to see it.
see that. Like maybe we do get a little bit of a flash from like the past and more history on Clint Barton,
Mm-hmm.
although it's not like, it doesn't seem like the story is headed that way.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that would be so cool, and I feel like it'd be really a good explanation for just the loyalty she has and how why she's so understanding. In my head, I'm over here like she's just a
Yeah.
gem,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I feel like this explains it so much better.
So, without further ado, Grace, just because of time, I'm going to bring up the image that I texted you,
Mm.
and you can just go ahead and dive right in.
Guys, guys, watched last time's episode, and obviously I ranted a little bit about it today. You guys would just know how excited I was when, we have Kate in the apartment. She's meddling through, what we now know is Maya's things. We know Maya has a list of Clint Barton's family that is a concern, and then we hear him starting to scuffle with somebody. I'm telling you, I've never been more like verbally like making noises watching an episode of anything. We finally get Miss Yelena Belova
Mm-hmm.
on the scene.
Mm-hmm.
And can we just say the way that she was introduced to this was so amazing? She didn't say a damn word, and she did not need to, because we know who this is. We know why she's there. And I think that fight sequence was just so well done, right? Because it was Kate versus Maya, Clint versus Yelena, and then it kind of got mishmashed a little bit once they got onto the roof together. But all in all, it was done super well. Her exit, by the way, Kate let her
Mm-hmm.
go. Like, I need to, I know they're going to dive into this in the next episode. They have to. Like, she let her go, you know?
I'm gonna argue that, but say continue. I don't know. I'm holding back. I got some.
Hold back.
Go ahead, continue.
You say, that's fine. That's fine. I'm gonna cancel my movies at
Oh
5:45. Like
man.
I will stay here.
Yeah.
um, and then that exit scene, right? Because like she doesn't have a weapon on hand. Kate has that arrow like ready to let go.
Mm-hmm.
For some reason, she does not. She gives her a look. Like Yelena gives her, I think she nods no, something to that effect. And then she just flies off the roof in such an epic way. And then obviously, like Kate's like, what the hell just happened? Who the hell is that?
Mm-hmm.
Clint obviously recognizes that this is a Black Widow
Mm-hmm.
assassin that has been hired by somebody. He obviously does not know who this is. He doesn't know that this is Yelena Belova. At least that's what it feels like.
Mm-hmm.
So it's such a great like way to end this episode, especially for all of us who've been waiting for her to come into the
Mm-hmm.
scene. And I'm just like that much more excited for episode 5 and 6.
So my gripe, and it's not it's
Give it.
not
Let's go.
it's not with this episode. This is an old gripe that I'm going to bring back up briefly. There
Let's do
was
it.
nothing scary about the Black Widow movie. The trailer was scarier to me than the actual movie. The scary aspects, aka the big bad, aka Taskmaster, fell short. Okay, and Yelena Belova was more so the comic relief in that movie. Was she badass? Yes, but she was more so the comedy. Now, enter Yelena into Hawkeye. We already knew who it was with the mask. I posted the comic book comparisons on our Instagram, and we knew it was her. We knew that she was coming. We've been waiting for her to show up. But we know now, since the post-credit scene of Black Widow, she has a vendetta. And now when it comes down to this rooftop scene, her mask is taken off, her identity is revealed to the masses, and this isn't the comical Yelena that we know of. This is the Winter Soldier. This is Thanos. Yes, she didn't say anything, but when the point where I said I want to argue here, as far as like Kate basically didn't do anything, she didn't shoot her. The face that I have in this image here is she is shaking her head, and she's like, "You don't want to, because I will murder you." Like, it was like on some
I'll take
super
it. Hey,
super scary.
I'll
Like, you
take
don't
it.
want that beef because listen, I do
You don't
this.
want to catch these
Right. You
hands.
don't want this. And in that, I was like in my chair, like, yo, Kate, chill. This is don't even
Back
do that, you know?
off.
Like, cause right now I am seeing another side of this quote unquote Black Widow that we haven't seen of. And Clint understands. He is over here like ending the shit. He's like, all right, Kate, sorry, this is over because we have a quote unquote Black Widow assassin that's after me. And after the movie Black Widow, I wouldn't have even thought of them to be assassins because it was almost like a light movie. It didn't go as dark as it could have. And Yelena in this episode brought the necessary darkness of what a Black Widow is and what it should have been in the movie.
You know something? I don't disagree with anything you said whatsoever. I agree 100%. That is what made this scene so freaking amazing is that you felt like the hype, the fear, you felt the reason he was so shook, he by meaning
Right.
Clint, when he realized there was a Black Widow assassin after him. I'm gonna just bring this in because if you guys saw our Black Widow episode, you know I was on the far end of the
Right.
spectrum when it came, or opposite spectrum as it came to chill. I loved it. I feel like that movie had hashtag heartstrings all
Mm-hmm.
around, and for that reason, that movie weighed so much because I don't think it was about the fear component here. Another thing, we actually did see a little snippet of that level of Yelena Belova in the very beginning after that, after the jump cut of when they were little,
Right.
when she's
Right.
still under that
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like that mind control, right? Because that's where she like stabs a black widow, twists the knife, everything. That's the kind of Yelena Belova we saw right now, but not because she's under mind control. At least we don't assume that right now. Just because on a vendetta, she's on a quest. She's here to kill, the person who she thinks is responsible for, her sister's death.
But say, with that being said, say so far before the Black Widow movie came out, we've only known of Natasha Romanoff, and with that, we know her to be an agent of Shield, to be an Avenger, and to be someone, a woman who can do so many like I think they're called scissor whatever with that
Yeah,
move, and we didn't get a feel of like you said at the beginning of that movie. Yes, under that mind control, Yelena went dark, but it didn't really hit for me just because she wasn't that scary. It's like I understand she was after a mark and then the mark actually turned her good, but
mm-hmm.
it wasn't until this moment here in Hawkeye to where it instilled fear, and
And you know something? I would say that that just heightens the fact that, Yelena Belova on a mission when it comes to like, defending, in this case, her
mm-hmm,
sister's death,
mm-hmm,
like, revenge is even more scary than a Black Widow assassin in mind control with no emotion. You know what I
right,
mean? Like, yeah. So I don't disagree. And I feel like that even heightens just the level of a threat that she is and what she brings to the table. So her introduction to the series, as late as it was beautifully done. We got, what did you say? What was the thing you messed up earlier?
uh
Netflix.
yeah, Netflix,
We got
yeah,
Netflix
yeah, yeah, yeah,
and Netflix.
yeah.
We got Netflix and we got whatever the word I said was, but it was done very well. So yeah, no disagreements on that end for sure.
So I think I want to end with, because I was going to bring up the ugly sweater again, but right now we've kind of gone down a dark path, and I want to kind of throw something into the air as far as where this show can go. Okay. Um, Clint now knows that he has a Black Widow assassin after him. Black Widow ended with Yelena Belova, I think, flying off with the rest of the widows. Now, from the commercials that I've seen of Hawkeye, I know there happens to be a big fight scene with Kate and Hawkeye shooting arrows in every direction. So I think it may very well be possible that maybe Yelena gathered the squad, brought all widows, just for the defense of the death of their sister, you know? Yes, Val told her, but who's to say that she didn't bring the other widows into the mix just so they can avenge her, you know? So,
I love that. And we know like the widows aren't necessarily are all banded together at this point because of Shang-Chi we see one of them is like kind of in like that underground fight match. So we know they've kind of spread their wings
mm-hmm,
and gone to other
mm-hmm.
places as one would when they've been brainwashed for years. But I mean, these women go back uh, years and deep. So who's to say that she's not going to bring him in? I love that idea
Well,
for sure.
we got a glimpse of that, like even in the Black Widow movie when were in whatever country they were in, they were in a safe house, and then the widows find them, right? Um,
Hmm.
they were still saddened that that widow died, you know. So they all have like a sister like bond, you know.
Absolutely,
So with
absolutely.
that
Hmm.
being said, one of their sisters died, and Val has pointed that sword in the direction of Clint Barton, saying that he's responsible for their death. So if this were to come to light, I think it would be a good. I wouldn't say safe to assume, but I feel like it would be good as if it now turns into uh, Kate Bishop and Hawkeye shooting arrows and fighting. I won't say all the widows, but just a handful of widows because
Some,
as of
yeah,
right now,
yeah.
we don't know who the villains are. Okay, we don't know
Hmm.
how Yelena found him. It could be a matter of Eleanor Bishop didn't like the elevator conversation that she had with Hawkeye, and she enlists some widows to take him out. And then Yelena's just like, "Oh, crazy! I was looking for for this
For you
person. Yeah,
guys,
yeah, you know."
yeah.
So I'm curious just to see how it all comes together by episode 6. I know we have one more episode, and with that, it leaves. I mean, we have one episode in between, but it leaves a sword fight with Jack. It leaves some type of fight with Yelena, and it leaves what we've seen in the commercial, some type of showdown with the two archers fighting alongside each other. So I think I thought of it earlier today. I feel like there is a lot to kind of close up in these two episodes, you know?
Yeah.
So I don't know if they're going to leave it open, but I'm sitting on the edge of my seat right now.
100%, especially with the way this episode ended. And I just feel like, I mean, I would be okay if some of these things weren't fully resolved because that leaves room for, say, like a season
Mhm.
two, you know? But obviously, we're going to get some resolution to something. I think in this next episode of the following, we're going to find out who the hell was on the end of that other phone with Eleanor,
Mhm.
maybe get a little bit more insight as to her depth and involvement into everything because obviously in this episode, it was revealed that Jack is actually like runs the tracksuit
Right.
mafia or is like the
Right.
CEO
Mhm.
to the front company that they have. So we're definitely gonna get a lot more reveal when it comes to those things. This episode was so heavy in seeing just where Clint is and like the mourning
Mhm.
and the grieving of the loss of
Yeah.
Nat. And I think that obviously that's common ground for him and Yelena once they do have their next interaction or whatever. Because that was their sister,
Yeah.
both of them.
Yeah.
Like they're not aware of each other and
Correct.
how important they were, with respect to Nat.
Mhm.
But they both love Nat in the same like quantity, I would
Right.
say. Um, and I think they're both mourning the same thing. And so I feel like that's going to be such common ground for them once they do have more interactions. And then Clint realizes why Yelena's even after
Mhm.
him. And so I'm excited to see all of that. I feel like the way this episode ended, we saw a lot of parallels to the trauma that he's experiencing. Like when Kate fell off the roof and he thought she was gone,
Mhm.
the music shifted into something that is so similar and sounds so similar to what we saw on Vormir in Endgame because that's mimicking the exact scene he had
Yeah.
with Nat,
Yeah.
like right before she fell off. So you know why he's cutting her off, why he's pushing her
He
away.
knew when Kate Bishop fell off the roof, right? And he saw the harness. He recognized it. He's like, this is the same harness that caught me from jumping off a cliff, you
Yes,
know?
yes,
And that
yes.
brought,
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm sure a whole bunch of memories. And he knew that it was a widow. He doesn't know who the widow was, but he now knows widows are after him, and the threat is real now. Like it has gotten too real, you know. And
Absolutely. And even leading to this point, we saw a lot of different snippets. We saw his interaction with like Kate when, they were talking about Nat,
mm-hmm,
talking about his other losses, those 5 years he went without his
mm-hmm,
family. And even earlier when Eleanor kind of made a little bit of a jab of like, well, Nat was good, wasn't she? But she's dead,
right,
right? And
right,
so it's boiling up, and I'm excited to see all this emotion come through, because I think just as they are mourning the loss of Nat, like that was a character that we have loved and adored for the past 10 years. So I'm excited for us to kind of see how that like resolves for this episode, for the series, really.
yeah. So I think that is pretty much everything that I got. I know we lasted a little longer, and that was more so just because of the glitch in the Matrix that we had last week. But thank you all for tuning in. This was awesome, Grace. I'm
I
actually.
think we did better in the third round, honestly. Lastly, because we didn't mention it as we were talking, but we know the watch is involved. I brought it up last time we did this stream. That it was probably going to be brought up again. The watch was brought up. It was
Oh,
pretty
right, right,
much
right,
like
right, right.
the what this episode kind of revolved
Mm-hmm.
around. So I'm excited to see who the hell this watch belongs to,
Right.
because it seems like it's someone that is still alive. I assumed it was Iron Man, so now I'm super curious. So we got a lot to still dive into in these next two episodes. That was just one little component that I realized we kind of mulled over, and that was a pretty big part of this episode
It
4. So I just wanted
it
to say that real quick.
it was just because it. I'm still yeah, like I'm with you. Like I'm actually confused as far as what character are we trying to keep in hiding, because
Mm-hmm.
Thor is off the grid. He's off planet. So is Nick Fury, as I'm assuming he's with the Skrulls. Um, Nat's gone. Tony's gone. And uh, what's her name? Wanda. She's off the grid, and I don't think anybody knows where her secluded spot is in the
Oh
mountains.
no, I
So
doubt it. Mm-hmm.
yeah, I want to know where this watch leads whoever, and how could somebody else know about these coordinates, especially like, say for instance, his wife. Like his wife knows about the watch and who it leads to, so it's not leading to her, it's
Yeah.
leading to someone else, you know. So yeah, I am curious just to know where this goes. Now before we head out, we have one last comment from uh this my guy Gnarly. He asked, who's you guys' favorite Marvel character and why? Now, being that this is your first episode, again, thank you for watching again. But I have spent many episodes talking about Iron Man and how he's the best. And I know I argued Clint Barton is the strongest, but right now, to this day, Iron Man, even though he's gone, is still my favorite character, just because he was cool to me. Like, it wasn't the fact that he was super smart, but it was his let's say his quote unquote narcissism, his attitude, his quirky remarks. That's what made him, and Robert Downey Jr. made him uh made him awesome, you know. So I
Absolutely.
am all about Iron Man. Grace, who's yours?
I just want to say you sounded so damn salty. You're like, well, if you did, how dare you not know my favorite one is Iron
Where's
Man?
he at?
Man,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sorry.
If you
I
didn't know.
apologize for chill. That was something, there's so many characters that I've really stolen in my heart. I love Gamora. I actually have her on my body. So that's just how much I love that character. She's everything I will never be. Spider-Man has a special place in my heart. That's why I'm like just so obsessed with like the multiverse coming together,
Yeah.
the
Oh,
Spideyverse, all of
definitely.
that. There's just Wanda, Vision, like I have a handful of characters that really hold my heart. And so those are the big ones that I can think about the top of my head when it comes to Marvel. If just in general, DC, Harley Quinn is like one of my favorites. You guys know that.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm excited because at some point we're definitely going to bring you guys an episode of just kind of breaking down our favorite movies, and I feel like that can also be intertwined with, our top favorite characters and
Yeah.
why. So that's going to be a fun one that we'll bring to you guys at some point. So definitely look out for that.
Yeah, I'm with that. I'm with that. And with that being said, uh, it's been real. I'm actually super. Uh, I wouldn't say
I'm
emotional.
content here.
I'm super excited for what's to come. So I'm glad we were able to get this episode off because I was bummed that we lost the last one. But we did it. We made it. And Grace, thank you again for being a trooper. Okay, because you could have easily said, "I'm out." You could have said
I'm done for everything.
again.
The
you
CCU
know.
with chill alone.
Right, but
um,
yeah, thank you for sticking it out in this
no,
episode.
absolutely. Absolutely. This is like the home to my nerdum. I appreciate you guys. I appreciate you, Chill. Like, this is our child, if you will.
Yeah,
And so I'm so happy we're able to bring you guys this episode. So happy it went smoothly. Honestly, I think we did better than the first one. Like,
definitely,
I'm pretty content with it,
definitely.
and I'm gonna say right here, I am emotional for these next two episodes just because it's going to get hashtag
Mhm,
heartstrings up in here
mhm,
because we have just two episodes remaining, and such as much as the action and like the bad guys are involved in this, Jack,
mhm.
the tracksuit mafias, all of that, we're dealing with the loss of Black Widow,
Mhm.
and that is
Yep.
huge. So super excited to come back with you guys on that next
Yeah.
episode.
All right. Well, this has been officially episode 13. That that everything is working and we are good. Y'all can hear both of us. And again, thank you all for viewing. And we will let you know when our next one is. Again, follow us on Instagram. You can find us with our respective individual. Me, I'm at Chill from VA, and Grace is Mighty Grace _fit. Or you can actually follow us, the actual Comic Cinematic Universe page at the Comic Cinematic Universe. No underscore, no dashes, no spaces. Go in there, hit that follow button, and yeah, like all pictures, videos, comment. Yeah, tell us your thoughts on anything that we
Yeah.
post on there. It doesn't have to necessarily be to this episode or this show. We're talking a little bit about everything. So yeah, Comic Cinematic Universe or the Comic Cinematic Universe on Instagram. So you all have a great weekend. Grace, you have a great weekend. And yeah, we will catch y'all on the next one.
See you guys next time. Thanks. Bye.
Later.